We have awesome presenters, Moko Morris and Shirley Simmonds, and if you joined us for our Seed Sovereignty webinar, they are our same presenters. So Moko Morris is a daughter, sister, mother, and nan working towards kai motuhake through understanding how to reclaim our relationship with Te Taiao. She advocates for decolonization and the shifting of power and control imbalances. She works for Korehia Kai, Zero Hunger Collective and Wellington City Council, who have adopted Hua Parakore as one of their framings for their Te Anamata a Kai o tō tātou taone, our city's food future. Moko lives in Otaki. And Moko believes that every time she opens a jar of fermented kai, she's reminded that the old ways still have so much to teach us about kai oranga today. Tēnā koe Moko. We also have the wonderful Otaki-based Shirley Simmonds. Otaki is hogging the kai mātauranga. Shirley Simmonds is a mother of 2 young sons, Tamihana and Raukawa, and is dedicated to raising them with the language and values of their ancestors. Shirley is a kaupapa Māori researcher and has a passion for finding ways to live in close connection with our environment. When not at her computer, Shirley can be found in the garden, at the marae, exploring new places or creating in the kitchen. Shirley and her whānau live in Otaki. And Shirley believes that fermenting kai is fascinating and it gives her another process to experiment with in the kitchen. Feel free throughout this wānanga to pop your questions and thoughts in the chat, and we will make sure to either get it answered in here or we can follow up post this webinar. Ka pai, so today's workshop is all about fermentation, and I thought I'd give you a quick breakdown of what that is according to Matua Kukara, Uncle Google. Fermenting food is a preservation process where beneficial microbes like bacteria and yeast break down carbohydrates, creating organic acids, alcohol, and gases to preserve the food, enhance its flavor and texture, and often increase its nutritional value by adding probiotics. I know it's boring to listen to people read stuff, so that's enough of that. But the benefits is that it extends the shelf life of our food, so it preserves the food. It adds a unique taste and texture to the food, and also it's really good for you. Those probiotics help with digestion and gut health. And examples of fermented foods are things like yogurt and cheese, sauerkraut, kimchi, sourdough bread, kombucha, and pickles. So food that we kind of eat regularly. Ka pai. So jumping into it, we are going over to Moko and Shirley now, our wonderful guests, and they are going to set the scene on all things fermenting. And I've just realized that I didn't introduce myself. How rude. I'm talking to you all for 10 minutes now. Kia ora tātou, ko Aroha Nui West Tōku Ingoa, huri tēnei, no Te Aroha Whānui, no Tūharangi Ngāti Wāhi ao Ngāti Whakauē me Ngāti Rangi Wewehi, and I am based in the beautiful Rotorua. Yeah, just thought that would be proper if I introduce myself, whānau. Okay, passing over to you, Moko and Shirley. Tēnā kōrua.
Tēnā tātou e te whānau. Hopefully, I have unmuted, yes. I'll pick that up from you, Aroha Nui. Kia ora, I see Moko's just popped off the screen. Nō reira, he mihi nui kia koutou, kua hono mai nei I tēnei pō. He uri tēnei o rau kua ki te kaukaro o Pātitere, ko Ngāti Huri te Hapū, ko Puketu, kei te Waotū te marae, mihi ana kia koutou e hono mai nei I te Waotū, ne kitea I tahi te chat rā. Ki te tau toku kuia, he uri ki no Ngāpuhi ko Mangamuka te marae. E noho ana mātou ko Aku Tama, ki konei, ki raro I te maru o ngā iwi e toru ki Otaki. Nō reira, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Thank you, Aroha Nui, for opening our hui this evening, and thank you all for connecting in. I just see a whole lot of screens. It's almost a bit daunting, but also really, really exciting. So keen to hear from you as well throughout the next hour or so. So please feel free to pop down your tips and questions in the chat as we go along. So I'll hand over to you, Moko. Kia ora.
Mauri ora kia koutou, he uri taku no te tairawhiti, no te tanga mahaki, enari noho au ki Otaki, no te mea tēnā kei ngā te raukawa taku nākau, mihi atu kia kōrua kei Otaki I tēnei wahanga. Kia ora, thanks for joining us tonight.
just quickly before you start talking again, Shirley, for those of you who don't know how to have the speaker take up your screen, because it's quite nice to see, we're going to have some presentations of fermenting throughout this wānanga, so it's quite nice to see that. So if you just push in the top right-hand corner, there's a little button that says view, and if you push that button, the top says speaker. If you push speaker, it'll spotlight the speaker on your screen. Ka pai? And if you're seeing a whole bunch of people at once and it's distracting you, you're likely in the gallery view. So just pop it into speaker view and you should be able to see our host on the big screen. Sorry about that. Kia koe te wā, Shirley.
Kia ora. Yeah, that's me on the big screen. Okay, so I guess for myself, I entered into fermenting. I already had a bit of an interest and passion for preserving kai. So sort of, it was a natural, I don't know, diversion from jams and pickles and so on. I also, as Aroha Nui mentioned, find it really fascinating. I find it a way to kind of experiment in the kitchen. But the other thing, and I was reflecting on this just this afternoon in the supermarket, I get a kind of sense of satisfaction at creating something that is, once you know how, is actually really easy to create, but costs a fortune in the supermarket. So that's one of my, I don't know, resistance or resilience measures that anyone can activate in the kitchen or wherever you might be. So I guess that's my entry into fermenting. I've experimented with a number of things, and then some things stick and they become habitual things that we incorporate both into our kai and our diets and into our pantry as we go along. So today I'm going to demonstrate how to do apple cider vinegar. It's really easy, but oh, and also just with using the things that you are really likely to have at home. So one of our key things is showing really how accessible these processes can be. But I guess just as an intro, like I say, my key interest came in because it's a fascinating process. As I've sort of expanded the things I've experimented with and used in the kitchen, I've kind of reflected on how it would have been really good to know some of this stuff some years ago. The health benefits, and Aroha Nui mentioned some of them. I feel like the scientific world is only just exploring them now in recent decades. Some of our more ancient cultures have known about them for centuries. But some of the benefits include gut health, skin health, and so on. And I know for myself, when I was younger, I had challenges with eczema and so on. My youngest son also had that, and I kind of wish I knew about this then and could have maybe trialed this as part of our solution finding for some of those things. So we should have time to expand on some of those throughout this next hour. But for now, I'll hand back over to you, Moko, before we do our demonstrations. Kia ora.
Kia ora iho. Yeah, I mean, I guess my journey was very similar. Aroha, I've got a bit of a cough, so I might have to jump off if I need to have a coughing fit. I moved back to Gisborne in 1999, and there was just so much produce, like apricots were everywhere. There was fruit everywhere, and so I just had this sense of, moving from Wellington, where there was quite a lot of food poverty even at that time, and it was expensive. And so just really got into like jams and pickles, and what that process looked like. And back then in Gisborne, and probably now, everyone seemed to be doing that. So there was lots of my aunties around that could guide that for me. And so I kind of stumbled into it by default. And then moving back to Wellington maybe 5 years later was really hard, particularly for the children, because they would say, oh, can we have the pears in the jars? We don't like the ones in the tins. And it was like, oh. And so just through a desire to increase my knowledge and to increase the kaioranga of my whānau, started to look at different ways of using kai. I'm absolutely not a I wouldn't say I'm on authority, or just from being a mum and experimenting is what I'm going to show tonight. So if anything, it's just about giving it a go and seeing what works, but also reconnecting with your taste buds. Had the opportunity to travel through work, and in South Korea, 80% of their, probably in the North Korea, 80% of their every meal is fermented. And so they consider anything that's been fermenting over 7 years rongoa. And so they've got a kind of a milestone, like a benchmark around it. And so when you go into restaurants, there's just massive pottery jars and containers of kai that's fermenting. And if you think about it, you know, that soy sauce, tomato sauce, all the condiments, plus fish, your proteins. But it really gave me an insight onto how little that we know, and how Indigenous knowledge, returning to Indigenous knowledge is really helpful for us, because our genes need traditional diets. Kia ora.
Tēnā kōrua, thank you for that beautiful introduction to fermenting. I made some notes. So to summarize, fermenting saves money. So some of these things are really easy to make but expensive to buy. This process of fermentation has been practiced for centuries and has gut and skin benefits. When there's excess fruit, veggies, and produce, they make, they're perfect for jams, bottling, and preserving. It's a way to save money, and it sounds like they're way tastier because your kids preferred the pears in jars rather than the pears in tins. And in Korea, anything fermented over 7 years is considered rongoa. So that's some interesting information there. And now we're going to see a live presentation from Shirley. And if you have any questions or thoughts come up throughout this process, please put them in the chat.
Okay, kia ora anō. And hopefully I can get the angle right on the laptop, which is just propped up on books in my kitchen. So probably one of the first things I tried fermenting was apples, and it was a little bit like Moko said. We at the time had lots of apple trees and we had an excess of apples, so gave that a go. And it is really, really easy. So literally in terms of equipment, mostly what you need is a good sharp knife to chop it up, and a jar. And any jar, big size is good. I've got some great big jars, but that's just a sort of regular one of those AG jars there. So just angling that. It's great if you have your own apples, or if you have an organic source. If you do get them from the supermarket, it's a good idea to wash them, because they put that waxy coating on them that makes them look shiny. So ideally wash them first. To make apple cider vinegar, you can use the whole apple, or you can literally actually just use the skin. So I started peeling here. I have this personal challenge to try and get as long a peel as possible. That's not essential, that's just one of my little things. And all you need to do, I probably don't need to show you how to chop an apple, but chop up your apple, pack it in the jar, and yeah, there's one over here that I've filled already. I'll add that one in there actually. Obviously, I wash my hands first. So pack your apples in the jar, and then all you need to do is fill it up with water. Literally, that's it. It is important what kind of water you use. So if you've on a town supply that's chlorinated, which we are here, so what I'll do is boil the kettle and then leave it sitting out till it cools. So that's been boiled and cooled. The other thing you can do is just pour off some water out of the tap and leave it sitting out like on the bench or something for about a day, and the chlorine sort of wears off. There's probably a more technical chemical term for all that, but boiling or just leaving it to sit out wears the chlorine off. If you've got spring water or rain collection water from the roof, you don't need to do that. So we've got our jar packed with apple skins. We're topping it up with water. Hopefully I've got enough. I've got there. And one of the key things, because you're going to leave this sitting there for a few weeks, one of the key things is to make sure that the skins are all submerged under the water. And they will float and move about. So ideally you have something that pushes it down to keep it weighted under the water. This is probably the biggest whittle, the biggest challenge. I have a jar, here it is. So I find little jars that fit inside your big jars are really handy. Okay, so I would just sit that there, balance it carefully, and that looks like it would do the trick. The other thing you can use, I've got this little, I don't know, thing from an op shop. No, that doesn't quite fit. But anyway, you can play around with different things. What I just discovered actually rummaging around this afternoon, that's a lid of one of those Moko jars. So it's glass and it pretty much fits in there nicely. So you want something to sit in there, keep your skins or your apple bits submerged under the water. It should ideally be glass or ceramic, maybe plastic, but definitely not metal, because the metal will react once this turns into an acid. But you don't want it to sit tight, because you want the whole process to be breathing as such. So there's that's the whittle, actually, finding something to keep them submerged. I do actually have these, purpose made fermentation weights, which are kind of okay. That one fits in there. Yeah. So depending on what jar I use, I play around and find something that fits nicely to keep them submerged. The reason you want to do that is if they sit up outside, then they'll start to go rotten and not the kind of pedo that you're wanting. So you're wanting a nice, healthy, safe fermentation process. So at this point, I forgot which weight I chose. Okay, that was that one. At this point, I would just cover it maybe with a tea towel or a cloth bag or something like that, whatever you've got handy, and then leave it on the bench out of the way of direct sunlight. And you can leave it there for several weeks. You'll see some action, it might bubble. It might also spill over, so you might want to put another dinner plate or something underneath so it doesn't stain your bench. And just, I sniff it every now and then, basically. This is where you can use all your senses to see when something's ready or at the level of acidity that you feel you might like. The other thing is sometimes, and I see recipes where they say you can add sugar. I guess you can add sugar. I never really have, and it still does the trick. So you can try it either way. So once you've done all that, I'll just made a big mess in the bench. So imagine that has sat in the shelf for a couple of weeks, and actually when Aroha Nui reached out to do this workshop, I thought I would better get one made in advance. So here's the one I put on. It was probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago. So that's a gigantic jar. And you see I've just used a rubber band to cover it. And this is one of those bags that you put your veggies in. So anything that'll breathe. As a weight, I've got a jar there of dried lemongrass. It doesn't have to be dried lemongrass, obviously. And nothing has gone pedo bad on top. To be honest, if it does, I literally just scrape it off with a nice clean spoon and then let it do its thing. But you see the difference there? I mean, these are whole apples, and that's just apple skins. But after some weeks, it'll look a bit more like that, browner. There's kind of a sediment on the bottom, got apples floating. Sometimes you'll get a thing, it looks like a kind of a scum layer on the top. That's good. It's called the mother, and that's like a real concentrated little growth of all those good, that microbiome that we mentioned earlier. So that's what it looks like after a few weeks. It smells really good. It smells acidic. It smells appley, so kind of what you'd expect. So what you might do now is Just sieve that off, and the liquid is your apple cider vinegar. Here's one. This is probably, I'm not really good at labeling things, but I think it's definitely more than a year old, maybe possibly even 2 years. So different colors just might be different fermentation stages or different types of apples actually. So you get all sorts of variation. So that's about it. I don't know that I can't think if I forgot anything just now, but I know we've got a slideshow that summarizes it all a little bit later. But it really is that simple.
We've got a
I don't
question
know if
in the chat
Oh yeah.
which says, can you use all types of apples? Do green work best?
I think you can use all types of apples. There probably is a difference between the different ones. I mean, effectively what's happening there is you're getting the enzymes from the apples, the sugar from within the apples, and the natural microbiology in the air and on the apples, and they're doing the fermentation process. So probably there maybe is a bit of a difference between the different apples, but you can use anyone. You can actually use any type of fruit. So the other thing that we'll do at home here is do this with feijoas in feijoa season, and you can make it actually just with feijoa skins. So in feijoa season when there's heaps of them and your kids just eat the bit out of the middle, you can save the skins, chop them up, and do this exact same process. If
Is
you
that
let it
with
with that, if you let it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you can, so people add sugar to that and create like a fizzy drink, don't they?
Yeah. So if you leave it for just a couple of days, it's a fizzy drink. And then a few more days or weeks, it's a vinegar.
Yeah. And you can feed that one sugar as well and have it quite sweet. But another question. Would or could you eat the apple?
I reckon you could. What I haven't tried. Are you going to make me try on live camera? I haven't. I normally feed them to my chickens and you could put them in the compost. One of the benefits of apple cider vinegar, and this is one of the uses I use it for, is I put it in the water of my chickens and it helps keep them worm free. It keeps them healthy and it keeps them, you never have to worm them. I've never had worming problems with my chickens. So you could.
Could that work for dogs as well? Or pets?
I guess I've not tried it on our dog. I feel like she might
not
want to drink the water, but you could try it. You'd want it quite diluted.
I should stop asking my own questions. So there's another question in the chat. Is that bottom layer what's called the mother? Do you eat it or does it filter out?
Yeah, the mother normally floats on the top. So to be honest, I don't normally get a bottom layer like that. It looks like the apple has just sort of broken up into little bits and sunk down. So it might have been due to the type of apple it was, and I don't remember at this point, that's fallen down. So the mother normally sits on top. This one doesn't have a mother for, again, I don't know what reason. It might be, it might have been that these were bought apples. Yeah, not sure.
Someone said that
so the mother normally sits on the top. That on the bottom, I think, is just a sediment.
Someone said if diluted, it works for my Siberian Husky. So someone else uses that trick as well. What else do you use the apple cider vinegar for?
So for me, I would use this anywhere that that calls for either vinegar or lemon juice. It's excellent in salad dressings. So use it for salad dressings. You can just put a little bit in water and then it's just, it's really good as a drink. If I make other pickles and chutneys, and those sort of recipes call for a vinegar, I'll use this. What else? That's the most of what I would use. Yeah, and I know Moko's going to share a recipe for a health tonic that we can make with this.
And just before we go to Moko, I have one more question. Sorry that I'm taking all the questions, but I figure if I'm asking them, maybe someone else is thinking it too. I have preserved fruit before, and I was always taught to use boiling hot water. And I think that was probably to do with the lid. And I'm just wondering, do you need to use boiling hot water when you're making the vinegar or no?
But for this one, I wouldn't, because you want to keep all the little microorganisms alive. So you're right, for preserving apples or preserving other fruit, you want boiling hot water because you want the fruit in the jar, in the lid, to be sterile and then seal it. So it's a slightly different process. So the process of fermentation is the thing that preserves the food in there. It probably has the reverse effect if you use boiling water with this, because you'd likely kill off all those microorganisms.
Well, that is so good to know. And our next wānanga might just be on preserving. And just before we go to Moko for her demonstration, do you have any other fermented goods? Because we're just looking at your beautiful pantry behind you, and I'm just wondering if you have anything else already done that you'd like to show us. It's completely fine if not.
Yep, I do, and they're right here for this very purpose. So, kind of interestingly, my oldest son's current interest is in kimchi, and it was good to hear about your statistics about Korea, Moko. So that's a kimchi. We've literally just made it in the last week or so. Our kura grew some fabulous cabbage, so we harvested one of them, and one cabbage made 3 jars of this, I think. So that's fermented for about a week. And it's spicy and garlicky and just really, really flavoursome. So that's one thing. What else have I got here? Oh, the kefir. So we might have heard of kefir. This is a kefir fermenting. You see the little grains in the bottom? That's quite hard to see. It's actually, this kefir is actually a little bit tired, so it's not looking that healthy. But that's a really good probiotic drink. And when that's filtered off, it just looks like that. So it's got a little bit of sediment or the mother in the bottom there. I have done kombucha in the past, but I don't have that at the moment. So the other thing that we ferment, if I'm doing jams and pickles and so on, often, particularly for marmalade, or this is a lime pickle, I'll chop all the veggies up and just leave them sit for about a day in all their liquids, and it's just this little bit of fermentation to help break down and sweeten, in particular, the skins and the marmalades and citrus pickles. So there's those, and then there's sourdough, which is sort of my newly acquired skill, or still acquiring it. There's a dough there. I actually made a bread yesterday to show, but we ate it. So there's a dough. So that's some things. The other thing I thought of was yogurt. Yogurt's the other thing that we use in our whare here that we make. Yeah, that's about it. So yeah, there's some examples from our kitchen. I'm sure.
And all of those things, they sort of, like, I think about kombucha, they use a bug, don't they? There's a word for it, isn't there? Or is it just called a bug?
Often they're called a bug, yeah. But like Rewana, it's called a bug.
Yeah.
Kombucha is a SCOBY. Kefir, they're called grains. So sometimes I showed you in the big jar. So they have slightly different names. Yeah, for Rewana, often it's called a bug. For sourdough, it's a starter. But yeah, it's the thing that's got all the activity and potential and growth in it.
And I know for yogurt, you can use just a spoonful of yogurt that you've already got from the supermarket to kind of kickstart that process of making your own. Sorry, just a few more questions before we go to Moko. But with sourdough and these other things, do you create your own starter, or is it better to go and ask someone who's already got an established starter?
Yeah, a bit of both. So I've had a bit of a challenge with sourdough. It's taken me probably about a year to get to that point. But you can create your own. Sourdough is fascinating. It's literally just flour and water. And there's a process for feeding it, discarding some, feeding it a little bit more until it gets nice and active and bubbly. And I can grab out of the fridge. our bug, I think. So I've got a couple of bugs in the fridge. This is actually one I got from a cousin of mine, which turned out a different loaf to my usual one. So that's all it is. It looks a little bit like a sloppy Play-Doh, but that's, you know, it goes a little bit dormant if you put it in the fridge because it's cold and it sort of goes to sleep. Take it out, feed it with flour and water, and then it grows and gets bubbly, and then you go through the whole dough making process. But to go from the starter to a cooked loaf, it's probably about 2 days. So it's not a quick thing, which is good. And Moko mentioned earlier about the fermentation process sort of breaking down some of the proteins and the nutrients in this case in the flour, and it makes it more accessible for us to digest. That's one of the benefits of fermented foods.
And someone said, if we have time, can we have an overview of your method to make yogurt? We actually have a few more minutes, so if you just want to quickly talk about that, Shirley.
Yeah, so again, a little bit like the apple cider vinegar, the yogurt things, it is in theory quite easy. So a key thing is to start off with a real yogurt. So if you go to the supermarket, you'll see a whole lot of different ones, but you want ones that have live cultures in them. So read on the back and just check it's got live cultures. It'll say things like acidophilus and a number of other sort of words that sound Greek, they possibly are. So use one of those to start with. There's a whole lot of other yogurts that have flavors and gums and things like that. They're kind of yogurt, but not yogurt. Okay, so that's a key thing. And to make it, you would just, and I would use one of these jars again. Get some milk, heat it up to about body temperature, 35, 40 degrees. And then pop it in your jar. And then have a couple of spoons of the real yogurt, mix it through. That's kind of it really. But then your real challenge is keeping that at a warm and constant temperature for, I don't know, 10, 12 hours, maybe a day. What I will do is actually use one of these EasyO things. So you can use the packet mixers with this, but it's also a really good general incubator, and it nicely fits one of these in too. So you'd use that, pour in warm water, so about 40 degrees Celsius. Again, a bit of a challenge is you probably want to top it up after a few hours to keep it warm. But I've seen other things where people, in order to keep it warm, they'll wrap it in literally a blanket, put it in the hot water cupboard. Some people use their dehydrator. If you have a dehydrator, put it on to sort of 40 degrees Celsius. But then, of course, you're using electricity, so you got to think about, am I saving money with this, but then using more electricity? So, there's those trade-offs. So again, experimentation, but the key thing is use live yogurt, warm milk, add them together, then keep this warm and constant, and you'll get yogurt. Because effectively what you're doing in that live yogurt, you've got all those little bugs, all those little microorganisms, you're putting them into the ideal environment for them to multiply and replicate and then make more yogurt.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shirley. I was so engrossed in that I forgot that I was facilitating this because I was just all in. Tony just left a great comment and said that the EasyO containers are really easy to find at the hoko shops. So, if you're like me and you're feeling inspired to do some more fermenting at home, then keep an eye out for those. And now we get to hear from the amazing Moko Morris, who is also doing a presentation for us. We really listened to your feedback, and you guys said you wanted more live presentations, so this is it. Thank you for that, and please continue to engage in the chat and let us know your questions and thoughts. Tēnā koe moko.
Kia ora. Thanks for that, Cheryl. That was really awesome. I loved listening to that and hearing how your whānau have incorporated that throughout all the kids' life. Amazing. So I just now you've made your apple cider vinegar, and perhaps you're thinking, how can I get the tamariki to try it and enjoy it and incorporate it into our day? So this is just a little tonic that Kim Baker taught me, actually, who owns the first organic certified apple cider vinegar company, and they're based in Otaki. So this is something that he taught me, which I use all the time with the kids, not now that they're bigger. So you basically just want to always get a bowl, and what you're going to find when you start fermenting and you start playing around with these wairua nourishing kai is you're going to start building the relationship with yourself as well. So it's a sprinkle of this and a little bit of that, and there are kind of no real measurements. So I've just got a couple of tablespoons of honey, and so I couldn't find a spoon, I grabbed some chopsticks. And so what we're trying to do is it's a little bit like what is it like? It's a little bit like kore, So we've hit kore, and we're just kind of warming that up. And it's therapeutic. I'm going to have to say it's really quite nice to take the time and just do something like this. It sounds like who would have the time to do this? But once you start doing it, you'll be like, yes, I can do this. So you can see just in that small time, the honey's kind of got a little bit softer and it's a little bit more pliable. And so then what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit of apple cider vinegar. Again, what you've got to think about is, how much do I want to make? Do I want to make 2 liters, or do I just want to make a small bottle? And that will determine your taste. So I'm just going to add a little splash. Let's go with a splash and see what happens. And so we're just trying to incorporate that together. We're trying to get them to kind of merge. So they're kind of, friends starting to hang out, trying to do their thing. And that didn't take too long. And it depends on the weather. Like, it depends on whether you've got runny honey, or your honey's been or the temperature. Like, today's not a bad day, and I put the honey on the bench just to soften it a bit. So if it's in the throes of winter, it will take a long time, but just persevere. So we've got it to the point where it's a little bit more runny. So we're just going to add a little bit more apple cider vinegar. Again, I don't know, let's just go and see what happens there. So I probably put another quarter of a cup in. And then we're just stirring again. What we're trying to do is we're just trying to get it to amalgamate. And it might take a couple of minutes, might take a little bit longer, might not. And then once we've got it to a point where we think, actually, that's collaboration, that's kotahitanga, that might work, then all we do is we just add water. And then we're just stirring it together again. Sorry, I lost my chopsticks. And it's really important when you're doing things like this that you're tasting. So you might taste it and go, it's got too much apple cider vinegar. So then you want to put a little bit more water in. Or it's got a little bit too much honey. So then you want to put another little bit more water in, or a little bit more apple cider vinegar. And eventually what will happen is you'll end up at Te Ao Marama. And it's a beautiful sight. And so I've got one that I did before. And so basically you can just store it in jars, put it in the fridge, and it's a really nice tonic. And so what I used to do to kind of make it special for the kids, I just got a whole lot of these little glasses, from the secondhand shop. They're probably shandy glasses or something like that, and just turned it into a bit of a ritual at breakfast time. So there was always, at the breakfast table, there was a couple of these for the kids, and it was like so that's how you start your day. And Kim always described it as the apple cider vinegar balances your pH levels in your body. And so adding the honey, I don't add honey to the ones I drink because I can just drink it with water, so I don't need it. But it was a good way to just get the kids used to that. And you can just adjust it, and you can make it fun by saying to the kids, which honey do you want? So we've got, I've got a horopito honey. I've got a rata honey. My favorite is rewa honey. That's what I like to have. So you can kind of make them or get them to curate your own tonic. And that feels quite good as well. I use it if you're on your feet a lot, and I used to work at a cafe, like really long hours, and I would come home and put apple cider vinegar in like a bucket or a bucket of really, really warm water and maybe some Epsom salts, and that just really does a lot for your feet. So if you're on your feet a lot or your feet are feeling a little bit tired, try that. It's really good. I pretty much use it in everything, to the point where I'm probably a little bit addicted to it. So whenever I travel, I've got this little jar. So I take that with me all the time. I was in Auckland for 2 days and that came with me. Put it in, honestly, put it in mince, put a couple of tablespoons in soup. Sometimes, when you're tasting something, it's a little bit fatty or there's something quite missing. Chuck some apple cider vinegar and stir it around and then taste it. And honestly, you'll go, whoa, what happened then? Because it just takes it to a different level. So some magic happens there, which is really cool. I'm going to talk a little bit about porridge. So there's a fermented porridge that is which is, I would consider my kai oranga. I really like party tea. I love it. I have it for dinner sometimes. And there's this recipe from a woman called Amber Rose. And I've used this for years. And so I'm not going to show you how to make it. I'm just going to talk about it, but I'm going to show you the jar. So I kind of just make it in this jar here. You can't really see the bubbles, but you might see it in the slideshow later. So basically I just put rolled oats in a jar, and then I fill it, like Shirley said, with filtered water. So you've got to use filtered water. And then I just add something, like I might add a bit of apple cider vinegar to get it going, or I might add, how you have yogurt and you've got that whey at the top, the liquid, so you could put a bit of that in, kefir, just have a look in the fridge and see what's there, and then just put some of those beautiful microbacteria in there to get it going. So I just popped that on the bench for, and when did I do that? Wednesday, probably this has been on the bench for about 6 days. And I had some just before and it was delicious. So I just popped it on the bench for about 6 days. It's a little bit funky. So there's some funk there, but it smells really nice and white and nourishing. And then all you need to do is just scoop bits out, scoop some out, and and just cook it how you would normal porridge in the pot, and enjoy it. So it's something that, it would work with gluten-free oats totally. It's something that a lot of cultures did. So that if you look back, the Scottish, I think the British fed it to their animals actually, but a lot of cultures had fermented oats, and what the fermentation does is it removes I think it's called the phytates in the porridge, and it makes it easier to digest, and it's better for you. So it's really delicious. If you don't like porridge, you probably won't like this, but it's a really lovely thing to try. It's got a sourdough kind of smell and taste to it, but it really feels like it's hitting you on a cellular level. So give it a go. The other thing I want to mention with that is, do I keep adding notes? Yeah, so I often leave some oats at the bottom, and we'll just keep adding to that. And if the water gets really funky, I might change it. So you can do either. It's just kind of personal preference on taste. But I think also we've got to acknowledge that, words like bacteria and fungi are kind of posed to us as dirty or disgusting, or, there's been some kind of colonization of kai oranga somewhere. And so we've got to kind of, lean into bacteria and enzymes and fungi, because those are the things that, really get our pukus going and help us a lot. So I've got another one here, which is the, actually, I'll just show you if we look at the rolled oats, so that's what they look like when they come out of the container, and then if we look at these ones, you probably can't see, but they've really broken down, and they're really doing their thing. So give it a go, because it's definitely worth going. Just while we're on the mentioning honey, this is lemon and honey. So this is just sliced lemons into a sterilized jar, And then I've just poured honey all over it. So that was probably maybe 8 days ago. And that just, like Shirley said, I've been sitting it in here because sometimes they can overflow. It smells amazing. So it's kind of ready when the lemon sinks. And so when I first made it, actually I'll pull that down a bit. When I first made, oh shit. Aroha mai whānau. When I first made it, it's, you know, like if you put honey in, it's really, you know, it's really thick, and it's just kind of starting to ferment and get quite watery when you mix the lemon and honey together. But you could put like different herbs in that, or you could put maybe ginger, or you could put maybe turmeric, something like that. That might work. But I quite like it with the honey there. This is just some miso. So how I was talking about, when I came back from Korea, I thought, right, how much fermented kai am I getting in my body? And so if you've got some miso, you know, when you're making your, like say you've got boiled veggies and you're doing spinach or silver beet, something like that. So I just, like I used to keep it for stock or something, but now I just tip it into a cup, and then I add a bit of salt and a bit of miso, and I just drink that while I'm cooking dinner. And that kind of feels like I'm getting something fermented into me. Do you guys remember these? These are like old Tupperware containers. I remember when I was 12, I thought this was the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And so it's got this really cool, if you've probably seen it at secondhand shop, you lift it up and all the veggies, the juice stays there and the veggies come to the top. And so, you know, once you're finished, you can just, you know, reuse that. And there's some, like, they're probably maybe a couple of weeks old. But the pickled veggies, like I strongly urge you to try the pickled veggies because they're really easy to do. And they are supposed to cull sugar cravings. And so, you know, maybe you can chuck them in your toasted sandwiches, or you can put some in a jar for work and just munch on them, you know, during your day, the cultured veggies. They're really yummy. Oh yeah, this one. And then this is something Jelaine gave me. So Jelaine works for Ngā Hapa Ōtaki, and they had a big hui, and there's heaps of garlic left over. So she just chucked it all in some olive oil and gave me that, which is so awesome because it just, you know, sits there and it does its thing, which is really awesome. But if we think about the cultured veggies and all the enzymes and the minerals that come from these ferments, it's a little bit like their only job is to get better and help your intestines to get, you know, break down everything. So they're responsible for breaking down hard fecal matter. They're responsible for they just go to work. And if you think about our brain health and our gut health being directly interlinked, that's really important. And so instead of, we talk about saying, how's your mental health, and that stigma that comes with that word. And so, you know, we can ask people, how's your brain health, which then leads you into the conversation around your gut health. And so it's a nice way, in a respectful way, of saying, hey, what's going on with you at the moment, or what's going on in your life, and can I do anything to help? So yeah, that was just a few things that you know, that help to heal us, and that hopefully you can implement in your kai kapata and part of your day. But I would just give it a go. Like, you've got to start building the relationship. While we're building the relationship with our tile, you're actually building the relationship with yourself. And so you've got to get used to tasting, adjusting. It's okay if you don't like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But then try something else, and just experiment, because these are all like taste expanding experiences that are particular to you and your taste buds, and what's in your whānau, what's in your marakai at the moment, and how we get them in us. But you just got to trust that, you know, people have been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, and returning to this is really got to be good for us. Kia ora.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Moko, for that. I was just about to paste in the chat, and I'm really glad you brought it up, the connection between brain health and gut health. And this is actually from a Harvard study, and it says, when we need to consider the connection between the brain and the gut. It's important to know that many serotonin receptors are located in the gut. There is anatomical and some big words, guys. There's a two-way communication between the gut and the brain via the vagus nerve. The gut-brain axis offers us a greater understanding of the connection between diet and disease, including depression and anxiety. So that's quite well studied now, about the connection between your gut health and your mental health and your brain health. So that's a really important thing to mention. Now, do you want me to share your presentation, Korua?
Yeah, that's good. I just want to add to that. And so I'm sorry, I keep harping back to Korea. But in the early childhood centre, and actually in public spaces, you know how you have murals? They had a mural which just fascinated me, and I can't find the photo. So it's got a tamariki that's eating, like eat. And then on the next slide, it's got the same tamaiti, and this is all like cartoon form, sitting on the toilet. And so from a very early age, you know, kai oranga, really good digestion means you excrete waste and you're healthy. And so I was really fascinated that at an under 5 level, that's really ingrained in them. And even the apple cider vinegar, I mean, I probably was there maybe, I'm going to say 12 years ago. At the, you know how you go into the shop and you buy fizzy drinks. So they have apple cider vinegar drinks like the one I just made in really small bottles so that the kids can buy them at that size for them. So it's a really ingrained in their culture, fermentation and the benefits of apple cider vinegar. Sorry, kia ora.
Kia ora. No, that's really interesting. And we do know that we look to these countries like Korea and Japan for their longevity. You know, they're known to live long, healthy lives. And I think it does ultimately come back to that diet. And as you've both said as well, you know, this is something that your nan and koro, your grandparents and the older generation have been practicing forever. And it wasn't, you know, even considered a skill. It was just part of everyday life. And, you know, to know that you always have a jar of peaches in the cupboard or a jar of, you know, pickled veggies in the cupboard means that you can feel confident that you're able to feed yourself and your whānau. So that was the real drive for this wānanga, was that if you take away anything, it's that how can you apply this at home and you know, get your kids and your whānau eating healthier and hopefully saving you money, because we know that kai is really expensive at the supermarket at the moment. So the more we can source and grow and preserve and ferment ourselves, the less we need to rely on these corporate giants who see kai as a commodity and not a taonga. So I'll just quickly go through this presentation. You two talk and tell me when to push next. And this is how we're going to close up our wānanga today. If some of you didn't read the pānui, this goes to 7:15. I understand if some of you need to hop off, but if you can stay with us for the next 15 minutes, that would be much appreciated. Tēnā kōrua.
Kia ora. Just in that hiatus while Moko was talking, I thought back to our first wānanga on preserving kai, and one of the feedback questions was, well, at that wānanga I shared that I had recently learned that you could preserve cakes in a jar, right? And I had some cakes in a jar on the shelf that had been there for some months, and somebody's feedback was, I wish Shirley had eaten the cake. So on that, I thought, following up on that question about can you eat the apples at the top of your apple cider vinegar, so I'm actually going to have to eat it, aren't I? So in the gap, I did try a little bit, but I thought just for posterity's sake, I will eat a bit of this apple on the top that, as we say, has been there for some weeks now, fermenting. It smells, like I say, vinegary, sharp, very appley. It's really mushy. It feels like baby food with a bit of apple skin on it. It tastes a bit kawa, and to be honest, it tastes a bit alcoholic. So I don't know what you might use the apple mush for, but that's my verdict on it. I do know it's fine to eat. Like I say, I normally feed that to my chickens. So this slide here is just a recap of the process of making apple cider vinegar. Chop up your apples. If you're using your apples for something else, like a apple crumble, or using the good parts of the apples, you can just do an apple cider vinegar with the scraps. So it's a good kawe momo kai strategy. Apples, cores and skins are fine. Pack into a large clean jar. Fill with water. Ensure all the apples are underwater. Cover the jar with a cloth. And I thought it was interesting. I have quite literally the identical cloth to what Moko had on one of her jars there. We're obviously op shoppers. Leave to sit for 2 or 3 weeks. This can vary throughout the year. Obviously, the warmer it is, the more the fermentation process happens. Strain the liquid, that's your vinegar. Compost the apple scraps, or as we've just seen, you can eat them. So I think on the next slide are some tips, Arohanui. We might have gone through some of these. To weigh down the apples, use a smaller jar or something similar. Sometimes the apple mix might overflow, so place a bowl or something underneath. Best to use organic or homegrown. Wash supermarket ones first. Yeah, I think we might have covered all of this. Kapai. And some of the uses. Tonic, dilute with water and drink. Marinades, that's one we might not have mentioned. Salad dressing, and like I mentioned, for our chickens. Some of the benefits of fermenting kakao and momo kai. Good way to use up excess in those times of harvest times when you've got a lot. Sorry, I've got a cat trying to get in the door here. It's healthy for our healthy gut and our mental health and all over health. There are other health benefits too. So somebody mentioned earlier about healthy skin and so on. You save money, experiment in the kitchen. And I think one of the other ones that, for me, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think it's a really good way, one of the ways to work at decolonizing our kai. Again, if you go into the supermarket, here's a little bottle of kefir. I literally saw one in the supermarket this afternoon. It was around $15. So you can save money once you have this mātauranga. It is really empowering. Kapai. I can't remember what's on the next slide. So yeah, here's some examples from our mara. So making chili sauce entirely from the mara has given me intense satisfaction. Literally the only thing in that chili sauce is a bit of salt from the supermarket and maybe a bit of sugar. So all the rest is from the mara. We've done this one, making yogurt from yogurt. There's an example from our puka puka there. Sourdough. That's a sourdough loaf before we ate it. There's my older son, Tamihana, making kimchi. So also uses chilies from our mara and garlic and spring onions. And some examples of kefir there. The second picture from the left, the white grains, those are healthy kefir grains. The ones I showed you were maybe a little bit tired. The picture on the far right at the top shows the kombucha SCOBY floating in the jar there.
Would you, because you said that kefir uses grains, where would you get those grains?
Yeah, I actually purchased my original ones online. I don't remember the company, but they run an organic food forest, and about once a year they make them available to distribute, and they come in a sort of because they need to keep cold, so in a coolie pack thing. I'm not sure where else you might buy them. Maybe somewhere like Common Sense Organics or Bin Inn often has these kind of things, or you might just look to your local hapori. Throw it out to the community and see what's possible. But once you've got your original grains, so long as you keep feeding them and keep that cycle going, they'll go till, you know, sort of indefinitely. Okay, some kupu Māori. So the kupu that we use to preserve kai in general is ruki ruki or haruki. Again, an example there from our puka puka of preserving fruit. To ferment, and the one I was most familiar with is toroi, which I've never eaten myself, but my dad talks about it with mussels and turnip tops, I think. But I think you can use other greens. So moe, toroi, mara. So some examples there, koura mara. And I can vouch my nanny from the far north used to ferment kaimwana, different types of kaimwana, so kina and koura, for weeks in fresh water and eat them. One we're probably all familiar with, or at least know about, is kanga piro, so fermented corn. It's an acquired taste, I think, but just some examples there from kupu Māori.
Kia ora, Shirley. Yeah. So there's like I said, there's I haven't put any quantities in, and that's deliberate so that you can have a look at, you know, what jar you're going to put it in, how much you need to make for your whānau. And it's a little bit like, you know, gardening. We have to understand the patterns in nature, and we have to understand the patterns in ourselves. So yeah, just honestly give it a go. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, we went through this. So the other thing I just want to flag is, and this has happened, you know, apple cider vinegar is an acid, and so it has to be diluted. And so there has been instances where people have put it in the microwave and heated it and drunk it and burnt their throat. So just really be, just remember how to te rā whānau. Okay, so these are the beautiful bubbles on the party tea there. So you can see that those lovely bits of magic doing their thing. That's just such a beautiful sight. And then yesterday, I can just go back to that last slide, please, Arohanui. Yesterday, yeah, this, oh, you can't see. Oh, yes, this bit here, the tour at the bottom of this, the black baking the world a better place. There's something like 100,000 tons of milled wheat that's produced in New Zealand, but 3/4 of all bread in New Zealand contains imported wheat. And so they launched this yesterday to try and encourage businesses and corporations to, you know, use New Zealand grains. Kia ora. Is that grammatically correct? Cheryl, I put pariti toroi based on your last slide, but if it's not, if you can change that, Arohanui, before you send it out. I love butter on my porridge. My grandfather we always had butter on our porridge, and so highly recommend. Kia ora. So this, I just want to shout out to Te Rangi Kaheke, who I met over the last couple of days. And he's standing there with Joe Wrigley. And so he inspired a kumara porridge that we had yesterday. So if you go to this website here, amberrose.co.nz, that recipe is up there, and it was a really lovely I would never have put kumara with, or would I? But it was really nice to try that, and so it was really special to meet him. So I just wanted to shout out to him, and also acknowledge you know, all the courses that I've done over the years, Emily Williams, and there's been so many, so it's all informed my thinking. So kia ora.
Just quickly, Te Rangi Kaheke is from Te Arawa, just have to say that, and he actually runs Kai Rotorua, so he runs an certified organic mara kai, that all of that produce gets sold in a organic store in town, and they do a whole bunch of workshops where you can go along and learn. Like at the moment they're doing subtropic agroforestry, I think it's called, and it's basically planting a whole bunch of fruit trees around each other and creating like a forest system so that you don't need to feed the fruit trees, they feed themselves. It's
nice.
really interesting, and if you're around Rotorua, I saw someone's in Putararu, yeah, you should really check out the Kai Rotorua page, because they just post a whole bunch of resources and host a whole bunch of wānanga. Yeah, just thought I'd quickly mention.
No, thank you. It's naughty of me to not put Kai Rotorua there, so before we send it out, let's add that in. I think we should add that in. Kia ora. Oh, yeah, I just wanted to, I can't remember what you said this, Shirl. So you might see, you have to burp some of the when you're doing the ferments because like it builds up. Like the kefir is one that does that. Where like if you've got them in these bottles here, when you open them, it's a little bit like it just goes boof. So which is why Shirl said to put your sometimes to put your ferments in containers like that in case they do spill over. So particularly with the vegetables, sorry, I don't know why. Particularly with the vegetables, it is good to burp them in the kefir just every now and then, so that you don't have any. I know this by bitter and disappointing experiences where I've burped stuff and it's gone woof, and it's like, oh, okay, what happened there? There's the honey ferment recipe. Just go for it. Give it a go. Just give it a go, and just get used to tasting and going for it because you know your body well, and so just try it. Oh, yep. Sorry, I just repeated that one. I think there's one more slide. Yeah. Sorry, I just said that. But honestly, I didn't know anything, but just wanted to give it a go. And what you'll find is you'll just sink into this really beautiful rhythm, where you'll see your ferments on the bench. You'll go, oh, kia ora, you're looking really good. You might tip the honey jar over. And then you're like, oh yeah, what's happening with apple cider vinegar? And you really just get into this beautiful rhythm that reconnects you. I remember when my kids were little, they would do the dishes and they'd say, do we wash this or do we feed it or do we give it salt or sugar? Like we don't know whether this is like butter or like. I was like, it's okay, we got to keep that one. It's fine. But it's lovely to share that with your whānau and get to know yourselves better. So thank you for listening. It's been appreciate you being here for these sessions.
Kia ora, Moko. That was amazing. Thank you so much. And if anyone has any last minute questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We've just got a whole lot of thank yous there. Thank you all for coming along. We're so lucky to have you though, Shirley and Moko. We're really grateful for your expertise coming on to share these awesome kōrero. And it does make you feel connected, to your grandparents and just think so highly of those ways and how much I want to return to those ways. And one of the best points that I just really wanted us to finish on is that slowing down is the point. So these things take longer and that's okay. In the world of rush, it's a blessing to slow down. And, when you do it from the mara kai, you're able to ferment things from your own mara. You're able to ask for help. It's okay to ask, community is what will save us when we are having food security issues. It's really nice to lean on your neighbors and to lean on your community, and then they know that they can lean on you as well. So that was a really good point for me, and you both mentioned it, was that it's okay if it takes 2 weeks or a month. It's teaching us to slow down and connect with our kai and ourselves. So I think that's an awesome note to finish on. And if